All right, hello and welcome everyone. So today we are finally going to talk about Ember. Ember is essentially a brand new Warframe now. With her rework, her 2 is brand new, her 4 is brand new, and her 3 is so different it might as well be brand new. Meaning, the only thing that she has that kind of resembles old Ember is her 1, and that's a bit unfortunate because her 1 really wasn't doing anything without the augment, but that augment is, of course, still available, so it's not so bad. With that, let's get into the build and then talk about these new abilities that Ember has. And for this, there are 2 builds. One, which is this build here, that is a bit more on the safe side. If you're going to be doing content at the 100+ level, I would suggest you go with something more like this, because this is a little bit more defensive. Originally, I was running way more power strength, of course, by just putting Intensify here instead of Vitality. And that was fine for lower level stuff. But as I encountered higher level things, because Ember's, let's call her not super tanky, especially when her 2 is at a low level, just adaptation by itself wasn't really helping her from being one-shot. Vitality boosts you up enough to prevent you from being one-shot, which means adaptation kicks in, and then you have time to get your heat higher for your 2, or a ton of defensive synergy to make it so that it's really hard to die. I have preferred that so far, but if you want to go for something a little bit more level cleary, this build is what I've been using for that. If you're just doing like regular old star chart missions and you just need everything that you can see to die, this is the build I would suggest for that. You could add another forma to use whatever polarity in the aura you happen to want, but I don't really think that's super necessary. Just throw Steel Charge in here after you aura forma so you can switch between all of the good auras, and then this build is fully unlocked for that. You could, of course, also just drop adaptation because of those lower levels. It's honestly not that necessary, and throw overextended into this slot, but that is, of course, at your discretion. This build is for map clearing because it is less defensive and way more range, giving her for a range of almost 50 meters, which is tons. But we're going to be focusing on this build and what it does. Both builds, however, use exothermic. This mod is really good, and I did underestimate it at first whenever I was looking at Ember. This says that Inferno Augment, which is her new 4, enemies killed while under the effect of Inferno have a 15% chance to drop an energy orb. This is way more effective than it sounds. 15% is honestly not bad. It's not affected by power strength, and it doesn't need to be. It would probably be absolutely fucking busted if this was affected by power strength. So yeah, definitely worthwhile to use this. This is what kind of fixes the energy economy of Ember, because you need to spam the shit out of your 4. With that, we're running max efficiency, and before anyone asks why I'm running a rank 4 streamline and a rank 5 fleeting expertise, please go watch my channeling efficiency video to go find out how channeling efficiency works, because I'm trying to bottom out the cost on my 2 whenever I overheat. Because that's important to do, otherwise you're going to hemorrhage so much energy, it will just be the most unsustainable shit of all time. With that, we have Transient Fortitude for a good chunk of strength, along with Power Drift, Stretch for enough range to be reasonable for most content, and Prime Continuity to, again, counteract some of that negative ability duration we're getting from both Fleeting and Transient to keep us at max efficiency. And this build has worked out great. I've been using it on just like all kinds of missions throughout the week on stream, and it has just performed very well. And where this build is maybe underperforming on Murder, I just switched to this one, and it does the job. So yeah, we're going to be showing this build because I think it is the safer one, and we're going to be showing some higher level-ish tests in this video. But let's get into the abilities of Ember. So, before I go into this, I do want to preface this by saying that I think Ember is fun. I think this new Ember is way more fun than old Ember. And I think it's pretty effective and a good Warframe. But I kind of dislike the way that Ember is now. Ember at current represents kind of the opposite of Saren, and we're going to get into why that is. First and foremost is your 2. So your 2 is damage reduction and also more damage for your abilities as you heat up. On the right side of the screen, you can see I started at 50%, and it's slowly rising as I'm just standing about. This will heat up faster as you use abilities. Your 1 or your 4 are the ones that heat it up. Your 3 will actually reduce it. We'll get into that in a moment. But if you get too hot, and you can cast your 4 with no targets, but it'll still heat you up. If you get to max heat, you will start hemorrhaging energy. And the longer you stay at max heat, the more energy you will hemorrhage. So it is unsustainable to just sit at max heat and like be heated up and be at your kind of full strength. This is really unfortunate because that's kind of where Ember would like to be. She'd like to be at full strength without hemorrhaging her entire energy pool. As you can see, it's a little unsustainable. To stave this off, though, you can cast your 3. And it is a little counterintuitive to spend energy to not lose energy, because that's not really how that works. But this is one of your 2 options for getting rid of this heat. Spend energy, get rid of some of your heat, and then it also lowers the rate that you're gaining heat a little bit. For me personally, though, I've mostly just gone with turning my 2 off and turning it back on, because that bottoms out my heat gain again, and allows me to more readily spam my 4. And this kind of gets into why I think this is not a great loop, and it's because it's a punishment loop. Instead of like Saren, where Saren is rewarded for constantly using all of her abilities. She wants her 1 on everybody. She wants to be using her 2 to distract and or heal with her augment. She wants to be using her 3 to buff up her weapon. She wants to be using her 4 to viral everyone and help spread her 1. Saren wants to be doing all the things all the time. And for Ember, using your 4 a lot or using your 1 a lot punishes you by making it so your 2 is unsustainable, and you kind of just have to turn it off and back on really, really often, instead of there being some kind of reward for you getting things heated up. You're the fire Warframe, but getting things too hot isn't a benefit to you for some reason, and it's really kind of unfortunate feeling whenever you're playing Ember. It is effective, and you can mitigate it once you get used to it, like just turning your 2 off and back on constantly, and only using your 3 when you absolutely must strip armor, because when you're fully heated up, your 3 does strip all of armor with this build on every enemy it touches, and that does have its place and will be useful in the tests we're going to show, but it's not really a reward for heating up, because it drains a bunch of your heat and all it does is strip armor, and we kind of have a million ways to do that. So, while I'm just not fully happy personally with Ember's loop, she is much better, and we're going to show that off now. So turn on our 2. We'll start these guys at level 80 and then just turn up the heat, if you will, a little bit. And this is going to be pretty easy. One of the big things that is a bummer for Ember, and it's a bummer for all AoE Warframes, so this should come as no surprise, is Ancient Healers will mess with you. Due to new heat, thankfully, it is very easy to get through armor, because whenever enemies are heat procced, they lose 50% of their armor for the duration of the heat proc. So it's pretty easy to dispatch enemies even if they are armored. And of course, you can just use your 3 to get rid of their armor in general. And you can see the damage of your 4 whenever you have fully ripped off the armor. Even on these level 80s, not bad, especially because you generally want to be spamming your 4. You can see that taking them out there. Is it more effective generally just to melee the heavy units than spam your 4 a whole bunch at them if they're the few enemies remaining? Yeah, absolutely it is. But generally, this is for clearing hordes of the weaker enemies, and it's going to be really effective at doing that. Now, let's jump this up. We're going to just throw it on, let's say, 120, and then show it off there. It scales pretty well. There is, of course, going to be the level where, like, your defenses just, like, aren't going to be enough regardless of what you're doing. But at most levels you're likely to encounter in Warframe, even some of the higher ones, this is going to be more than enough. And you can see, like, even some of, like, the mid-level enemies, like the Corrupted Moa, like, once you get it in on them a little bit, even they don't really survive. And then after you've done that enough on the heavy units, and then you strip their armor with your 3, it'll then end up finishing them off more often than not. And you just got to remember to recast your 2. And the armor strip is permanent on enemies from your 3. Which is nice, because you don't need to recast it ever to keep the armor stripped. But yeah, it works really well, and of course I don't have a Sentinel equipped right now, so I wasn't getting any of the big benefits of course, having Vacuum to zoop up all this energy, but you can see pretty readily that exothermic is generating a lot of energy. So in a situation like, say, a defense or a survival or other, enemy-laden modes, or hopefully enemy-laden, let's say, spawn rate can be a little unforgiving at times, you're going to have tons and tons of energy to go around and keep casting your abilities. So yeah, it works. Ember is much, much better than she was, but it gives me this weird feeling because just a Warframe with, let's call it, negative reinforcement on their kit just feels really, really weird, because usually the really good Warframes in Warframe are kind of just all positive reinforcement, where you just want to be using their entire kit in conjunction all the time. And this one has the weird deal where you turn your 2 on and off a whole lot of the time because you don't need to use your 3. But yeah, that's going to do it. That's Ember. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think about the kind of negative versus positive reinforcement design choices they could make in the comments, because I think it's a pretty interesting discussion personally. But yeah, I will see y'all tomorrow.